It's going live. And the Hangout is live. So hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the very first broadcast of PASA Alumni Google Hangouts. I am your host, the Alumni Relations Chair for pasa.network, Arlan Mendiola. So the way this works is that each month on the first Wednesday at 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll be hosting a panel of PASA alumni through the use of Google Hangouts. So each time we'll be talking about a specific topic that was voted on by current PASA students. So today we'll be talking about self-care. It is my hope that through the use of Google Hangouts, I'm creating a platform that allows our PASA alumni to share their successes and knowledge with current PASA students, as well as other folks in the higher education community. And the beauty with this is that after the broadcast is done, it will become a YouTube video. So here's a rundown of what to expect in the Google Hangout. So in about a few moments from now, we'll have our alumni introduce themselves. And after introductions, we'll have a conversation around the questions that PASA students submitted prior to this Google Hangout. After our discussion, we'll take questions from the viewers on the Google Plus app. We'll then conclude with our final remarks. So before we have our alumni introduce themselves, I just want to thank each of our alumni for taking the time to be a part of this Google Hangout. We are making history here today, creating something that never existed prior to this moment. So we have three of our wonderful alumni here today. Our fourth, who has advertised, Chelsea Lucio, class of 2013, the Director of Applied Management Research Program at UCLA, could not join us here today. However, she did submit her responses to the questions, and I'll be sharing it out in our conversation. So without further ado, I'll have our alumni introduce themselves. So name, year that she graduated from PASA, your current institution, your current office, your position, and what you do. So we'll have Vincent, you take it off.
Hi everyone, my name is Vincent Scarfo, and I am currently the Community Development Coordinator for Brandeis University. I graduated from PASA in 2013, and this is my first position outside of graduate school. A Community Development Coordinator is a lot like a resident director or a resident coordinator at most other schools, so I manage a staff of 13 RAs, which we call community advisors. We like the word community a lot, so a lot of our position titles and office titles are based around community. But I've had a great experience living outside of Boston, exploring a new city, which we'll probably talk about more in the self-care section of when we talk about what we do to kind of get away from campus. But yeah, was there anything else that you wanted from me?
Oh, that was great.
Back with my intro.
No, that's fine. Lindsey, do you mind sharing?
No problem. So hello everyone, my name is Lindsey Fogleman, and I graduated from PASA in 2012. I am currently at University of California, San Diego, or UC San Diego. I was originally hired here as an admissions officer, so I was very fortunate I got the job several months before I graduated from PASA. And in December I was promoted to Assistant Director of International Admissions. So I specifically work with the international student population and applicants applying for undergraduate admissions at UC San Diego. I also supervise 5 admissions officers, so 5 staff here at the university. I travel, so I recruit in the fall internationally, and then I review applications in the winter and the spring. And then in the summer, I review transcripts to confirm they match transcripts and that students passed all of their courses and are still eligible for admission to the university. So I have a job that works a lot on a cycle. It has a lot going on all the time. We're always busy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And Kristy, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kristy McCray. I graduated from PASA in 2007. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry. So I graduated in 2007. I've worked various jobs, as that was 7 years ago. Oh my God. But I'm currently at The Ohio State University. I'm working on my Ph.D. in sport management. And I'm working as a graduate teaching associate. So I teach 2 classes to undergrads, and I'm starting my dissertation this week.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah.
Great. Thank you all for your introductions. So let's start the conversation off with how we define self-care. We all have many different working definitions of self-care, so I think it'll be really good to really see like where we're coming from and how we can really talk about it. So anyone can take it away.
So I would say I define self-care as taking care of yourself both physically and mentally. So I think doing activities that keep you healthy in both of those ways, and just making sure that we're in a profession where we're always looking out for others with student affairs. So we're really we're student-centered, student-focused, and so we're always trying to do what's best for others. And I think that a lot of times we let ourselves fall behind, and so for me, self-care would really just be about every once in a while taking a moment to focus on yourself and make sure you're there physically and mentally.
I think one of the most important things with self-care is setting boundaries, whether that's like making sure that you're not overstepping boundaries and getting too involved in someone else's problems in life and focusing inward on yourself, or like just setting time for yourself to not think about work and turning off your phone and turning off your email. And if you live on campus, like getting away from the campus, leaving, going into the city, or going into the country for like a quiet retreat, like something that involves getting away and turning everything off. I think it's really important.
And I think the last piece is also recognizing that what you're doing is self-care, right? Like a lot of us run or go to the gym because that's what we do and it's part of our routine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we've turned our minds off or we're not thinking about our students or our work. So when you're engaging in the activities, whatever it may be for you for self-care, it's knowing that like this is my time for self-care right now and I'm being very cognizant and conscious to use this time for that.
And Chelsea responded, self-care to me means making time to focus on yourself, your needs, and maintaining you as a priority amongst life's other commitments. For me, like when I was reading Chelsea's piece and like hearing amongst all of you, like I really resonate with a lot of what all of you have said, and it made me think about how do we maintain self-care as a priority. And I had to really think about that in this past week of like self-care. Like I want to believe it's an act of like self-love, that I choose to love myself, to be gentle with myself, and be in tune with what my wants and needs are. Because we're all each living our own life. This is our life that we're living in, and that we need to take care of ourselves for the long run. So we'll move on to the next question. So what self-care practices do you all engage in regularly, whether it's like on the short term or even the long term?
I mean, for me, exercise is one of them, and I think that's also why I mentioned doing it intentionally and being intentional about it. I think especially, and I feel like they're the yin and the yang to each other, but yoga and running, because running will allow me sometimes to like, aggression, and then yoga's like the calm zen to balance that out, and I can tell like if life gets busy and I haven't made time and I don't make, especially for yoga, and I don't make the time for that, I start to feel myself getting like, so for me those two things are big, and I think the other one is also having people who know what I'm doing, and can relate to me. One of the fields I worked in was rape crisis prior to working here, and it's one thing to vent, and it's another thing to have someone who you feel like you're making a connection and they understand you. Because I can talk to, my mom or my sister about what I did at work today, but they don't get it. They don't know how sapping it can be, and like Lindsey was saying, how we always put other people's care first. My sister's a hairdresser, and I'm sure she wants to make people's hair look good, but it's a different sort of profession. She's on her feet all day. I sit all day. We have different stressors, but that idea of talking to people who know and understand what I'm doing is really, really helpful.
I agree. Exercise is definitely part of my self-care routine as well. I was never one to like go to the gym all the time, but after working in the field, I found myself feeling like run down all the time, and I never had like the energy, and so I started getting up a half an hour earlier and going to the gym because there was a nice like 3 treadmill, 3 elliptical machine gym right down the hall from my apartment. So I just walk down there, hop on the treadmill for a half an hour, and then hop in the shower and do my morning routine, and it made a huge difference with my energy levels and just like feeling better. But on top of that, I also really make time for my hobbies, and I use that also as a way to meet people in a new city. So when I I don't just knit in my apartment and crochet in my apartment. I go out and do that at a knitting circle, so it gives me time to kind of socialize, but also do something I really enjoy. I also made time to read books for fun, like actual novels, which you'll have time for after graduate school, I promise, and time to watch my TV shows. And I think that's that time to do things that you enjoy, even if it's by yourself or in a social setting, is really important.
I'm going to echo a lot of what was already said, but exercise is a big one for me. So I have a membership for a yoga studio, and so I go to yoga every morning at 6 a.m. before work, and that's because that's the only time I could find work in my schedule. Things come up during the day. I could never get off work on time to make it to class, and so what I do is I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. I go to yoga. I do that. It's done. It's over with for my day, but I feel like I get a lot of extra energy from it. It's not that it takes energy away from me because I'm waking up so much earlier than I normally would, but I really feel like it helps give me energy throughout the day. I feel happy that I have taken the time to exercise or to do something for myself in the morning before I even get my day started at work. So that's a big part of what I do to maintain self-help for myself. And sometimes that means sacrificing evening outings. I really do. I love to try new foods, and so that's another thing I do for myself. I like to try new restaurants and go new places, and so sometimes I have to sacrifice some of those things to do other things, like go to yoga in the morning because I can't stay out until midnight, wake up at 5 a.m. and go to work because I'll be miserable all day. And so it's learning how to get that balance in your life as well, and learning what things are important to you, what makes you feel good about yourself and what you're doing. So but that is one thing I like to do. I really do like to go out and eat and try new places, and so I try to make a priority to do those things and find people who will do them with me. So whether it's my boyfriend that's going with me or whether it's a friend that's in town that I haven't seen in a while, trying to make those appointments so that you're really getting the opportunity to see people. That also forces me to leave work. I am a workaholic, and so I could be here all night. I could easily work until midnight and be back here at 8 a.m. But when I set appointments for myself and I set these things for me to do, it really helps me balance my life, and it forces me to leave work. So I joined a kickball league here in town, and that forced me to be at games at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, so I knew I had to leave work on time. I couldn't stay late, and so things like that have really helped me balance my life and make sure that I'm not overworking, because I really do get into my work and what I'm doing, and I could spend hours and hours and hours here after our closed. So I found that that's really helpful. And then I too just like to take time for myself, and sometimes you just have to, like, I wanted to watch the whole 4th season of Downton Abbey the other day, and I did it. And I did it by myself, and that's okay because that's what I wanted to do, and that's what made me happy, and that's what I needed at that moment. I didn't want to be out and doing other things. I just really wanted to relax, and so I spent the entire weekend watching Downton Abbey, and that's okay.
Thank
One thing
you.
I want to add to that, though, is like I'm sure the people watching who are like, there's no way I could get up at 6 a.m. or there's no way I could go to the gym at 7 a.m. I was a complete night person, going to bed at like 3 a.m. every night and then waking up at like 11 or so. And if I can do it, I think anyone can. It's once you get into that schedule, it just becomes easier, even if like you're an evening person. So don't kind of write it off until you've gotten into that schedule and tried it out.
And I think touching just a little bit on that, it's like what makes it work is scheduling. You would never break a meeting with your boss or with one of your students or whatever. Like, you schedule that time in. And that's actually something I'm currently struggling with, is now that I'm starting my dissertation and I'm feeling a lot of pressure, it's like, oh, I'll just do this one thing and then I'll go to yoga, and this one thing turns into 4 and I miss it. Where I would never flake out on this call. I would never miss a meeting with my advisor. So, like, write it in your day planner or put it in your phone or however you schedule things. Put in that half hour for running or that hour for yoga, or put kickball on the schedule or whatever, because if it's not scheduled, it's so much easier to blow off and then just get in your habit of being work versus like schedule time for you.
Chelsea responded to this one. So she kind of echoes with all of you with her self-care is mostly exercise, so whether it's yoga or actually doing gym dates with friends, she tries to exercise to keep her mind clear and her body feeling good. For me personally, since I tend to be a creative and artistic person, so I like dancing, and like dancing like no one is watching. So sometimes, like in my apartment, like I just like blast it and I'm just like jamming out and just like really feeling it, because I think a lot of we carry a lot of stuff on our bodies, that we carry a lot of stressors, and for us to really, unleash that and like move around, just to release. Also, for me personally, I write pieces about how I feel, and I actually perform it as spoken word. And I think the process of being able to name how I feel and then sharing with other people, it helps me feel better about it. It helps me know that that I'm not alone, that I'm able to further build upon the relations that I have with people. Because if I'm sharing like, hey, like I'm stressed out, I just need time to just hang out with you, spend time with you, and just feel good about it. So we'll move on to the next question. Sorry about that. And I know some of you have talked about this before in your previous statements, but what are the benefits of engaging in self-care? And on the flip side to that, what are the costs if we don't engage in self-care?
Well, I think the costs are that we get crazier and crazier and crazier, and then it turns into like, and you snap at your coworkers or your family, or you yell at your cat when you come home, which I've done before. So I think the costs of not doing it are, it takes a toll on other parts of your life, other pieces of your relationships. And sorry, there was something I totally wanted to add to the last question, which was a bigger piece sometimes is going to therapy when we think about self-care. And I just wanted to throw out there that a lot of schools and universities will have free therapy sessions, and they usually limit it 10 or 20 a year, but a lot of times they do have that for faculty and staff. So that's something else to take advantage of, if only to figure out what are the negative benefits, and kind of have someone lay that out to you, or working with someone to figure out, this is what makes me feel good. Because for those of you listening, you're like, no, I hate yoga, I don't want to run. What does make you feel good? Sometimes a therapist can help you figure that out. Sorry.
That was fine. Before we continue on with the conversation, I know, Vincent, you're going to have to leave soon, so I want you to be able to share your take on this question before you have to go.
Yeah, speaking of overscheduling and stuff, I totally scheduled this while I have to teach a class in 10 minutes, so I'm going to run and go teach that class. But one of the important things about making time for yourself is avoiding burnout, because if you don't have someone to vent to, if you don't have someone to just kind of empathize with what you're going through, and like Kristy was mentioning earlier, having that person who you can talk to about your job, and having that time where you're not thinking about your job and having that time to be creative, you'll get so burnt out, and you're going to start resenting your coworkers. You're going to start hating your job. You're going to forget why you loved it in the first place and why you started working there in the first place, and you're going to be miserable, and it can start to affect your job performance. It can start to affect your outlook, and then you might just not last in that position. You might want to start changing careers immediately, and that's not really good when you're trying to start building a career and start getting out there and learning more about the position if you're becoming jaded in the first few years of being there.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, you'll start to hate, like you said, you'll resent the people that you work with, you hold them responsible, you start to dislike your job because you feel like it's taking over your life, and that's why I think it's so important to make sure you're taking the time for yourself. There's also, of course, that you could possibly end up sick. I've had plenty of times where I'm just trying to make it to a deadline. I overwork, and the next day I come down with the worst cold I've ever had, and it's because your body knows, you're trying so hard to just hold out until this last possible second, and the moment you let go, the moment you relax, you come down with something, something that your body's been holding on to, and your immune system's just gotten so weak because you haven't been taking care of yourself. You haven't been eating regular, nutritious meals. You haven't been taking the time to work out or walk or do something, be outside, get vitamin D. I have major vitamin D deficiency, and I shouldn't, living in San Diego. And so it's, just taking the time to take care of yourself so that you don't end up sick, I think is a big thing too.
Going on that healthy, nutritious meal kind of thing as well, cooking for yourself is so important. It's so easy to get bogged down and be like, I'm getting home at 7, I should just order something in or go pick up McDonald's on the way home or something like that. But just buying things that Trader Joe's has some really good freezer meals that are actually very nutritious, because they're filled with like spinach and like high vitamin stuff that you can do really quickly for lunch and stuff, or cooking on Sunday night for the entire week and just kind of having things that you can reheat yourself on those nights where you come home late. But taking that time to cook for yourself and to do things like that allow you to kind of choose what's going into your body rather than at the last minute just deciding to go for a less healthy option. So that's definitely a big part of it.
Absolutely.
Great. So Chelsea's response into this, I think, is more so with the cost. So for her, she shares, it's important to remember to take your vacation days and take care of yourself. No one's going to push you to take your vacation, but remember that you've earned it and that the office won't fall apart without you. And I think that's really powerful in recognizing that the work is always going to be there, but you may not be. There's always more work to do, especially within higher education, within student affairs. And so to really like prioritize ourselves, like, hey, no, I've done a lot of good work. I should take these vacation time to really travel or just spend time with family, being intentional about that. It's interesting because I was thinking about this last week in one of my classes, and I can't remember what the conversation was around about, but what I started thinking was that self-care, like if we don't practice it, it could really affect our professional reputation, especially for a lot of current PASA students who are watching this right now live or on the YouTube video later. Just as we're starting out, like I would hope that if we don't have, or what am I trying to say? I hope that we're able to practice good self-care techniques and strategies because we're trying to make a name for ourselves. We're trying to really go after the positions that we hope to do, the work that we really love to do. And if we're not able to take care of ourselves, it might really impact our career trajectory. So I thought I'd just share that piece. So we've been talking about before how trying to fit it into a busy schedule, and that maybe like, oh, wake up a little bit early, maybe like 5, 6 o'clock. I know some of our PASA students have been wondering, how can we incorporate self-care into our busy schedules?
So like I mentioned earlier, I mean, I wake up early and I thought that I was crazy. And a lot of people still think that I'm crazy when I tell them I do it, but I think that that really worked for me. Also look at other alternatives. So I know here at UC San Diego, they actually teach like in-office courses. So one of the girls here in my office recently set up like a lunchtime Pilates class where the instructor actually comes to our office and they teach it here. And so that way the people in our office are able to just go on their lunch hour. It's a 1-hour class. I mean, you don't have to travel across campus or do anything like that. And so look into opportunities that are available at, if you work on a campus, if you end up working in some sort of organization, look at if things like that are available, and maybe other people in your office want to join in self-care and just getting away for an hour for 1 week. So maybe you think like, oh, I can't fit it in otherwise, but what alternatives are there? Can you take advantage of recreation classes that are offered on campus or bring an instructor in? I thought that was a nice alternative way.
I think it's also important to set some sort of consistent schedule. I know that in student affairs it's almost impossible to have the same schedule every week or even every day, like every Wednesday you do the same thing. Like it's not really possible, but just making sure that you get up and go to sleep at the same time every day is a huge deal. So if you can't get up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m., like getting up at 8 o'clock every day and going to bed by midnight or 1 a.m. is so important because it gets you on a schedule. It gets you acclimated to that schedule. And then you're not like every time you get up off of that schedule, you're not feeling like crazy, like bogged down, or your body's not confused because it's something that's consistent. So yeah, I also have to leave now, but thanks, Arlan, for putting this together. And don't be a stranger. I'm on the PASA Facebook group, so feel free to reach out to me or send me an email. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Vincent.
The other thing I was thinking is having like an accountability buddy. And so, it's once Lindsey has made those friends from kickball, and, not only does she have it on her schedule, but now if she doesn't show up, they're going to be like, Lindsey, where were you? Or when whether it's yoga or running or going to, like Vincent was saying, like his knitting club. It's like having people who will hold you accountable, and not in a like punishment sort of way, but like, oh, we missed seeing you last night, and then it kind of makes you realize, like, actually I did want to be there and not in my office. So kind of doing activities with people, or if there are things you like doing alone, still kind of telling someone, you know, like, hey, I'm so excited to go to this festival this weekend. And even though you need some alone time, because some of us are introverts, we don't want to do everything with everybody all the time, you know, then that way somebody will follow up and be like, Kristy, how was the festival this weekend? You're like, oh, I didn't go. So having like an accountability buddy can help you stick to those things a little better sometimes too.
Well, yeah, I definitely resonate with that. Because, yeah, like, you are having someone being involved with, you know, your self-care, and even though, like, you'd hope that they wouldn't be, like, shaming you, be like, oh, why didn't you do that? But just, like, I think by the act of sharing it, that you're giving them an opportunity to care about you as well. And I would hope that, especially with our current PASA students right now, if you're listening, or again on the YouTube video, that to really take the time to share with other people within your cohort across the program what it is that you do want to do with your self-care. Like, if there's activities that y'all want to do together, being intentional about it, share it out. And then that way, not only are you taking care of yourself, but I would hope that you would be able to feel more connected, that this is more of a community here. So we'll go into the last question for now. But anyone who's viewing the Google Hangout right now, if you can submit questions to the live app, that would be great, and then we'll take it after this final question that PASA students already submitted. So I know we've been talking so far about what self-care can look like, about when you can do it, and I know some of you have already touched upon how you can incorporate it into the workplace. From what it seemed like from some of the questions that PASA students submitted was, you know, not only how can we incorporate into the workplace, but how else can we involve other people? How do we have conversations around, like, if we see a coworker not practicing self-care, how can we talk to them about it? So things of that nature.
I think that it would be a difficult conversation to have with someone if you noticed a coworker not practicing self-care. I mean, based on whether you're close to them or you're not close to them. But I think, you know, one route you could take is just inviting them to go to lunch somewhere not in your office. And so, you know, just getting away from the office. I mean, that's taking them outside the office if you feel like they're working too much and they're not doing things, and then just learning more about their interests. From there, you could always proceed. Like, oh, you're interested in, you know, walking around the lake. Like, I'll go with you on a weekend to walk around the lake. Or, you know, oh, you're interested in joining a kickball league. I did that already. Like, let's see, maybe, you know, we can join one together. Or I can at least put you in touch with the people that do it. So finding interest, and a way to do that, I think, is stepping away from the office and going to a different environment. Maybe finding somewhere on campus that the two of you haven't eaten before, somewhere nearby that you could go to escape during your lunch hour. You know, and just kind of getting outside the office could be a first step in helping someone else engage in self-help.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Lindsey touched on a great point, which is how well you might know that person, you know, and do you want them to come to kickball with you? But also thinking about, you know, how their potential lack of self-care is affecting others or affecting others in the office. You know, I feel really sad when you email me at 3 a.m. about this project that's not due until next week. You know, please know I won't be responding to your emails at 3 a.m. And then it can open the door to the conversation about, like, why you're not checking your email at 3 a.m. and healthy self-care habits around sleep and appropriate work boundaries. So, you know, seeing, and like we talked about burnout, and the way that we might treat our coworkers, that could also be an invitation into, like, hey, I really value working with you, and I feel like, you know, you're working a lot and really late at night, and I don't want you to get burnt out because I like being around you, and I don't want you to start to resent me for, you know, being a part of this workplace that's taking you down. So I think sometimes too, it's this, like, affirmation of, like, we're doing a good job, we're all doing the best we can. And I feel like that sometimes is the conversation that comes up with my classmates now or some of my coworkers, is along the lines of like, you know, there's always going to be somebody who works more than you. Maybe not harder, but works more. It doesn't mean they're working efficiently. It doesn't mean they're doing the best work. It doesn't mean they care more than you. So in that respect, like, you don't need to compare yourself to others for like your work input. And I think that might be difficult too, especially for new graduates or people who are in their first year or two of the job, like watching what everybody else is doing. And as you interview, that's a great interview question. What, you know, how does the office value self-care? Or what is the culture of self-care in this workplace? And if they're like, self-care, what's that? Maybe it might not be a good fit for you. Or maybe they say, we do lunchtime Pilates, and you're like, yes. So, you know, as you're interviewing and graduating and finding places to work, those are things that I think are fair to incorporate and ask in your interview to even determine the culture of whether or not that's a place you want to work.
Mm. I really like the point that you brought up, Lindsay, earlier about, you know, just asking them out to lunch, taking them outside of the office. It actually speaks to a point that Chelsea made about how I would hope that all of us work on very beautiful and gorgeous campuses, and why not take the time during lunch to really enjoy it. I know for myself, I really make it a priority to not eat at my desk, to really enjoy the weather, because even though it's very hot down here in LA, still just take that time to really enjoy that sunny weather, because you never know when it won't be sunny. All right, so we'll go to the questions from the live audience, but apparently there don't seem to be any questions right now, which is perfectly okay. So I think, if anything, we'll just talk about like final thoughts about self-care. And if there's any particular resources or publications that you all want to refer our viewers to.
So I have a couple things I would recommend that seem silly when you're younger, but I think that are so important that I've seen affect a lot of my coworkers or you know, colleagues that I have here. One of the big things is ergonomics. So like was mentioned, most of us are going to work at a desk like all the time, and it may not seem like a big deal now, but make sure your mouse is set up correctly, make sure your keyboard is at the right height for you. If you need a keyboard tray on your desk because your desk is too tall for you, just like mine is, then advocate for yourself. Find out if the university has the fees or the funds to be able to help provide those resources for you, because it may not seem like a big deal when you're 27, 28 years old, but when you're 45 or 50 and you're still working at the same desk and you were working incorrectly with your wrist bent in the wrong way, or you just felt a little bit uncomfortable in your back, something just didn't seem right in your mid-20s, by the time you're 50, you may have problems with your wrist. You may have, you know, end up needing to have surgery. Several women in my office have needed to have carpal tunnel surgery, and so I think that that's something that we don't necessarily think about because our bodies work well for us typically when we're younger, but look into things like ergonomics. So when you do start at a new job, investigate if the university has ergonomic resources for you. So I know here at UC San Diego, they do an ergonomics review. You go through, you do a quiz. Someone can even come in and observe you working to help you identify what you need. And if your university doesn't offer something like that, there are plenty of resources if you just search online for office ergonomics. And so I would definitely recommend looking into that. Just making sure that you're comfortable in your workspace if you're spending 8 hours sitting there every day. The other big thing that sounds silly, and I know people say it all the time, but just looking into retirement benefits. Because the earlier you start, the better it will be later on, and you're going to be a much happier individual later in life. You're not going to be as worried if you've kind of set yourself up early on. And I know it sounds silly, but people say it to me all the time, so I thought I'd bring it up.
I sent a whole list of resources along, so please feel free to share those if anybody wants them. I think one of them is this concept of a wellness wheel. So even if you just Google like wellness wheel, it helps fill in some of the pieces, because I think a lot of what we talked about today was actually very physical in nature, eating right, exercising, but there are so many other pieces. And so even like Lindsay, financial wellness, right? I mean, if you can't sleep at night because you can't pay your bills or you're worried about the future, that's a problem. That's part of self-care, you know. spirituality. None of us really touched on that, but I know that's big for a lot of people, and maybe that's making time for church or for church activities or things like that. So a wellness wheel can also give you ideas, especially if you're listening and you're like, I don't want to run and go to yoga. That can be really helpful. And there's resources along those lines. Usually when you Google wellness wheel, it'll come back with some stuff that kind of tell you how to make those activities intentional. Like I said, it's one thing to just like get on the gym get on the treadmill at the gym, but if you're still thinking about work, it's not going to have the same benefits. So how to be intentional about that.
Let's see, with Chelsea, she referred to, the Oprah and Deepak Chopra 21-day meditation program is outstanding and will really inspire you. It's a simple addition to each day that can make a huge impact in your life. I also love the book called The 4 Agreements. Pinterest is my favorite place for inspirational quotes and affirmations, so print them out in fun fonts and hang them at your desk. All right. Well, I want to thank all of our wonderful alumni for joining us here today and sharing their insight and wisdom. So for viewers, next month on October 1st, I'll be hosting another Alumni Google Hangout. Next month's topic is how to maximize your conference experience. So until then, everyone have a fantastic Wednesday. All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.